Hello viewers, Flash Motorsport here, and welcome to today's episode of What Are My Settings. Now, I use a Logitech G920 racing wheel. It's on an X rocker, I think it is, kind of just the frame, and I get my chair up to it and sit with it. So I had a comment recently from Cliff Whatever who has asked what are my wheel settings. So let's take a look at them now. I set the steering dead zone to 0. I don't like having a dead zone, it's weird. And the outside dead zone is 100%, so you get 100% of the rotation of the wheel. Steering axis is inverted, no. Invert force feedback, no. Accelerate and dead zone. Now I changed this down from, I think it was default 10%, and I found it quite weird with the throttle how you actually 10% doesn't seem a lot, but it felt quite a lot on your foot. So when you're trying to feather the throttle when you're going around the corner, I noticed I was pushing my foot down, and then when I was watching back the video I recorded, there was no input, and I could tell slightly it just wasn't right. So I've reduced this to 5%. Due to the way the Logitech pedals are, I wear shoes just because of the brake pedal is not the best. So when I stamp on the brakes, I don't actually hurt my feet. I stamp on with my shoes on, and it doesn't feel as hard to push down as what you would do with, just your naked feet and socks on. So I've changed that to 5% as well. The accelerator pedal on the Logitechs are quite soft, and so I found even though I was putting throttle on, you couldn't really feel it that well. I mean, you get used to the position of where your feet are, where maximum and minimum is, and or on a full throttle or off. So reducing that to 5% made a huge amount of difference. The acceleration dead zone at full throttle, I've moved down to 95%. Really, I don't like when you're stamping on the pedal, and you go and you hear the donk. You can feel it in your feet where you're at the end of the travel on the pedal. I don't always have my foot buried down. It's quite an angle, so I've reduced that just a little bit. So sometimes when you're on full throttle and you relax your foot a little bit, the pedal does lift. So I've reduced that away to create like a dead zone. So even if my foot lifts off with 1 or 2%, it's still on maximum throttle. Right, the deceleration dead zone, which is your braking dead zone, it was pretty sure it was default 10%. I moved that down to 5%. The Logitech brake pedal isn't the most sophisticated, so I reduced the dead zone so I can just put my toe on the pedal. And obviously with your shoe on, you get instant braking, and you have more variance in the braking itself. So you have more control of the brakes if you just want to touch it around the corner. The deceleration dead zone is 50%. Outside dead zone is 50%. Logitech pedal only goes halfway unless you take the rubber out, so you might as well have it at 50%. And when you stamp on as hard as you can, you're pretty much hitting that rubber barrier anyway. I think that kicks in about 52, 53%. So having it at 50%, you don't have to smash your foot down, but when you hit a corner pretty hard, oh crap, you do bury your foot down anyway. So the clutch and the clutch dead zone, I don't use the clutch on this game anyway. Handbrake, I don't use the handbrake. It's the B button. You don't need a handbrake unless you're doing some insane drifts. So the vibration scale I have set to 80%. You do get a sense of vibration in there, so in the Logitech G920. So if you're rubbing along a curb, or your tires are you're giving them too much and you're starting to understeer, you do get a sense of like a jittery in the wheel. It's not prominent, it's not very strong. It is there. So I've set it to 8%. It's quite kind of a sweet spot. The force feedback is 100%. Self-steering, self-alignment are left at 100%. The mechanical trail scale, I've turned down to 0. The higher you turn it up, the smoother it is. I don't care about the smoothness of it. I want the raw feel of the vehicle. So I've turned that down to 0, and it is quite on point with how with the suspension, you feel it flopping over and pushing down on that wheel. You do feel the steering wheel pull. Now, if you turn that down and it becomes smoother, you don't get such a pull on the wheel itself. So having that down to 0, feeling it straight away, you can react straight away going, I'm giving it too much, I'm not giving it enough, or I'm about to understeer into a straight line out of this bend because I'm just gonna bottle out this wheel. So setting that to 0, you get to a more of a feeling of how the car is hitting those bends, and you can push it that little bit more. So the pneumatic trail scale, I've turned this right up to 160. This scale is to do with the way the tire is moving as it's contacted to the road. The lower it is, the less chance you feel of the tire scrubbing, the tire giving out due to either under pressurize the tire, for example, and you're hammering it into a bend and the tire wall gives up, for example, and you get deformation in the tire. You won't feel that if you have that really down low. So I've whacked it up, and you can really feel the tire give up. You're turning the wheel and you go, I've got grip, I've got grip, I've got grip, and then you get a kind of on the limit. You get a light spot on the wheel, and you can just about hold it on that light spot without pushing it too far, and you get an amount of oversteer. Until you get a huge amount of understeer where it decides to go straight on. So you can really hold it on that tire wall, and you can feel whilst you're going around that curve, around the turn, how that tire feels. You can just literally wiggle it just a little bit sometimes back and forth just to bring it into where it's about to give up and back out, back in, and it gives you a quite nice feel about it. Road feel scale, I've cranked that even higher. Now, the road feel on Forza is not the best, I'm not going to lie. You don't feel the curbs. If you're lucky, you feel the curbs half the time. Some of them work, some of them don't. You know, I've done a lot of racing in the wet as well, and I find that the road feel isn't the best. So what I've done is I've turned this right up to 175, and you can feel the steering go much lighter when you're hitting a bend in the rain. So in the previous video uploaded with the Subaru BRZ, when it was raining and the rain came down a lot more, and you could see the track get wetter at Road America over time, the steering became much lighter, and especially in the really wet patches and the puddles and everything, you could turn and the steering wheel just went from underneath you, and it was just, you're aquaplaning to an extent in Forza. So having this cranked up, we get a feel of where the grip is in the road as well. So over time, in a race of Forza, you get rubbering effects. So as we go around progressing through the laps, say if you follow the same trail and everybody else is doing the same trail, that part of the road becomes grippier due to the rubber that's left over from your tires previously. You do feel that in the wheel. That's why some of the races you see as I progress further, I get faster and faster throughout the lap time. It's not just because I'm doing it over and over, even though my tires are getting weaker. Some of it is quite down to the rubbering effect, and I'm getting more grip throughout these turns and bends as I was previously. So, like I say, having that cranked right up, you get a much better feel of the roads, and you give the car a bit more, and you can get it, like I say, right on the edge, because the steering wheel, it does pull you, which is quite nice. Load sensitivity. Now, load sensitivity scales how much the aligning torque is affected by tire load fluctuations. Lower parameters produces smoother aligning torque, but provides less feel for the tire load changes. Now, in essence, I've cranked that up to about 70. What it really means is, as you accelerate or brake, the weight of the vehicle then transfers onto the tires, and that's your tire load fluctuation, because the weight of the vehicle is now sat on, let's say if you're braking, sat on the front tires. You do feel that when you brake in and you turn into a corner, if you trail brake, you don't get as much as a turn in as you were previously, and you do feel it because the steering is quite light. You turn in and you go, oh, I'm understeering, and it's by the time you realise you're understeering, it's too late. So you see me sometimes going through a turn on some of the videos where I'm just dabbing that brake a little bit just to get that nose end coming back down, because you're starting to understeer. I can feel it understeering. Although I've still got throttle on, I'm keeping that constant speed, dabbing the brake, knocking a couple of miles per hour off, shifting the weight of the vehicle onto the front tires, buries the front tires back in, and you feel it in the steering wheel, because where you're losing grip, it's quite light, And then when you're braking, the steering pulls you into the turn you're going into. So if you're taking a left-hand turn, for example, the steering pulls you into a left-hand turn better. So you have a bit more confidence in the vehicle turning. Wheel dampening scale, I've turned that right down to 0. Now, I've tried different settings on wheel dampening scale. It's basically how heavy the car or how heavy the wheel feels whilst you're driving the vehicle. To me, it seemed anything higher than 0 just seemed false. I've driven cars, driven buses, trucks, and they come in various kinds of weights. And to me, having any of that wheel dampening scale higher than 0 just didn't feel like a natural car. And I've driven cars, electrical power steering, hydraulic power steering, and I'm mimicking to an extent what hydraulic power steering feels like, having it on 0. It's a light-ish wheel. I wouldn't say too light or anything like that, like electrical power steering, but it feels like a normal saloon car, and you're not knackered at the end of the track. This setting, unless you like a heavy wheel, provides no feeling of the road within the games. Center spring scale, I've turned down to 10. I don't like it. It feels weird. A car doesn't just automatically spring back into the middle. So why should my steering wheel, whilst I'm racing the car in a straight line, just, you let go of the wheel, just yeets back into the middle. I like that gradual turn into it, and I prefer the torque trying to straighten the wheels out than a computer trying to straighten the wheel out, if you understand what I mean. I didn't like the way it was really fighting it, trying to, the steering was fighting, trying to get straight, and it just didn't feel realistic to me whatsoever. So I turned that down to 10. Any lower than 10, it didn't seem to have much effect. So I like a little bit of spring back, like you driving a normal car, but any more than that just seemed false to me. Dynamic damper behavior, I've turned down to 20. Because I think the default was 50. What it does is the lower it is, you get the more detail of the tires when they're slipping, and the higher it is, makes it much smoother. You don't really feel it as much. I've turned it right down. You do notice when your tires are slipping, there is a notable vibration in the wheel. It is pulling to the side, left and right, where you're skidding on the tires. Take, for example, the start line, you're pulling away. You are holding that wheel straight, and you're trying to keep it in a straight line. It does make a vast amount of difference, that setting, dynamic dampener behavior, especially when you're going through a turn and you're on that bread limit, and you feel the deformation in that tire. You feel how it's starting to slip, and you feel the wheel. You hold it in one place, and you just do that 1 degree move more, and it goes light. So if you just hold it on that setting there, where you got it just on the lightness part, you can really turn it into those bends quite tight, and you are holding it on the vehicle's limit, and you really feel that through the wheel. Steering sensitivity is 100%, and steering linearity is at 50%. At 50% is just a natural feel, 1-to-1 ratio, and it's quite responsive. If you have it any higher than that, you turn the wheel, it can be quite disorientating. So that's my Forza settings I've got set up for my racing wheel. I try to keep it as true to life as possible. That's what I'm used to. I've been driving for many years of my life, so I'm used to how a car feels, where I'm pointing it where it should be, how the road should feel. Obviously, everybody who's driving or not driving has a different take on this. So take these settings as a little guide for how you are. Go onto a practice test lap. Do your lap on the normal settings, on the default settings. Look at what I've got set up here. Mimic that. And then do a lap again and see how you feel. Do a couple of laps on that. Then look at your times, see if you improved and how you're comfortable with that wheel. Then I would suggest going into each setting. If you're not comfortable where the tires feel on the road, adjust the tires more or less on how they feel. Get a better understanding of how you feel that tire on the road. Like I say, take these with a guideline of what I'm comfortable with when driving. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.